Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for turning up. As ever, there's people joining as I speak, so just take a few moments to get started. Now, hopefully on the screen, you will see details of our polling that we're going to do today. Now, this is an experiment. We haven't done this before with this larger audience, so it would be great if you could join in. It makes things more interactive and gives some instant feedback to ourselves and yourselves as we go through the presentation. It's completely anonymous, so don't feel any issues at all with what you answer, and please join in. So to do that, the polling is now open, and we are going to set a simple question to answer very shortly. But if you could log on to the VVox app, and if you've got your phone, you can use the QR codes. Both are the same, just one's bigger and one's smaller to fit into your screen size. Or you can go to vvox.app. Make sure you don't try and create an account, and you put that 9-digit code in, and you should get something like the little screen on the far side of the screen. So what I'm going to do is get us moving, and so let's get on to the first question. So if you've got the app open, you should be able to see a question asking which country are you in? Just a one-word answer if you can. And this is really just a chance to practice what we're doing and give you a chance to do it. Hello, Jim. Thanks for putting it into the chat. If you're not on the VVox app, great to see you using the chat as well. Got a couple from Australia there. Just a word while we're doing that. We have got just Ian and myself on the call, so we are encouraging lots of use of the chat and the Q&A in Zoom, but it's very unlikely we're going to be able to answer most of those. But we really want to do it because we can pick this chat and the Q&A later on, and it gives us great feedback and a chance to replay the answers to yourselves and others as we go forward. So I'm getting a range on the chat: Belgium, Australia, Japan. I'm going to close the poll shortly. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if this works, so closing now, and we should get a word cloud. Here we are. So there you are. That's a great mix of countries there. Thank you very much for doing that. So we've got UK, Germany, Philippines, Nigeria, Finland, South Africa, Netherlands, Belgium. And I guess we've got UK and Australia there, which are probably, I think, larger because there's more people voted for those. So that was just to get you used to the polling. We'll repeat the instructions as we go forward. Whoops. So the purpose of this webinar, we just want to get things moving. We've had SFIA 8, and we want to now start looking at what we're going to be doing after SFIA 8. We have had some people looking at this. The SFIA Council has expressed some views, and we've started kicking off some important initiatives. But it's a community effort, and we want everyone to know what's going on, hopefully to get involved, at great detail in some of the initiatives that are of interest to you that you want to progress. So this is going to be fairly informal, just give you some background, and it will definitely not be the end of this. We want to just get this moving, get this started, and then find ways to get you involved in further detail as we progress. So the next poll, just set it going. Whoops, sorry, this is me. I've closed it by mistake. Let's go back and reopen that one. Right, here we are. So we know that we have a wide range of experience amongst our community. So this is just a chance for us to see, what the spread is, and I guess for us to think about how that may influence the answers and priorities that people give to some of the questions that we ask later on. So for those of you who joined slightly late, we're using this VVox app. You'll see at the top, you can go to your browser and put vvox.app. and enter that 9-digit code, the 105727281, into there, and you'll get a little screen. Otherwise, at the bottom, there's a QR code that you can use on a phone or other device where you've got a QR reader. And I can see at the moment we've got quite a number of people who are on the call who aren't on the VVox app. So we're going to be asking more questions. So please take the time to get into that app. It'll really help things later on. Okay, I'll just give a. Oh, great! I can see lots more of you coming in now to the app. Okay, so I'm going to close this particular topic down now, and we'll be able to ask you further ones later as we go. So the spread here, okay, well, again, it's really useful. So we have got around 80% who have either just learning or have got some hands-on experience. So that gives us a good sense, and that's, I think, is exactly what we're expected of this community group, is that people who are getting used to using SFIA, working with it, but they're not at the end of used it in lots of different ways in lots of different organizations. So that probably matches where we are. Okay, as you have seen, we're experimenting with some of these tools. We've got a really large global community, and it is really tricky to find ways that work in engaging all of you. So this is what we're doing. We're going to be using various tools over this year, 2022. If any of you have got some expertise in using some of these tools, or even thinking about how we engage people, it would be great to hear from you. We're particularly keen against using Miro, which we think will make a big difference to how we get your opinions and views on some quite detailed topics. Now I'm going to hand over to Ian, who's going to talk through briefly around the SFIA Foundation and our strategic aims.
Okay, thanks, Peter. As many people are sort of starting out with SFIA or relatively new to SFIA, it's worth returning to what the SFIA Foundation's about and why we are the way we are. Although we have a long history, we have fundamentally 4 main aims. Now they're probably fairly clear in our own mind as to what they are. The first and foremost is that we provide the global skills and competency framework for the digital world. We've done that for 21 years. That is our primary aim. Up until a few years ago, we didn't do too much to promote it. We are starting to promote it ourselves a little bit more than we have done in the past. So our secondary aim is very much to increase adoption of the SFIA framework. And alongside that, it's really a question of certainly maintaining the quality of the framework, but to drive up the consistency in its use. We're finding that more and more people are using SFIA, and there's a strong case for doing more to support them, which is why our activities have spread from just the framework. And the fourth activity, or imperative, if you like, for us as a global not-for-profit foundation is we actually have to source sufficient funding to be able to deliver the other 3 things. So that's why we have the licensing, and that's why we do actually occasionally look for money. We only operate on a subsistence level, so we are able to keep our fees low, and we are able to still do what we want to do, which is make sure that SFIA is not prevented from being used simply on the case of costs. So that's what we're here for, that's what we do, and I think we'll be doing more obvious elements of each of these as we go forward. I think I've got the next slide as well, haven't I, Peter? Yeah. So as Peter said, if we look back very briefly, SFIA 8 was published. It was a complete rewrite that was very well received. We are in a much better position to take the framework forward than we have been in the past. It's been steadily getting easier to maintain, but Peter bears the brunt of the update process, and we're trying to make that as easy as possible. One of the great successes of SFIA 8 development was the monthly updates. We were keeping people informed throughout. There weren't any surprises towards the end, and we want to try and keep that sort of momentum going, even though we're not looking at an immediate update in the next in the next few months. So we want to keep the monthly updates going, but it's not going to be about updating the framework. The beta launch was well received. People had seen the framework long before it actually was fully published, and so there were very few surprises. We're doing more on the mappings that we did for NIST, NICE, ITIL, and COBIT to be updated for SFIA 8, and we've got a number of other mappings that we're looking to produce in the next few months. And we've seen a significant growth in a visible growth in the global usage. We do not know our full user base, and we are often surprised, but one of the elements that has helped this is undoubtedly Australia as a country deciding it wanted a countrywide license of SFIA, and we are exploring a number of other countries that want the same. So the growth in interest has meant that there's a demand for tools, resources, and mappings, and that in itself drives interest in the framework itself. So Peter, back to you. But things are very positive. There's lots happening, and I think now Peter will explain some of those things, or give you an option to find out about some of those things.
Thanks, Ian. We're just going through some of the background here, so we will be getting to the meat of the webinar very shortly. This, as Ian said, we don't have an accurate view of everyone in the world who's using SFIA. We will talk about something we'd like to do to get more information, but one of the things we do have is the stats from the website, and they are only website Google Analytics stats, so they aren't a sign of everything that people are doing, and sometimes can be misleading. But what we can clearly see, if you look across this picture here, there's two things really stand out. A huge amount of growth in people coming to the website and using it, and that growth is spread around the world. So we have the days of this being thought about as a UK only framework, which many people had a perception of. We can see that actually we've got a great growth across the world, and share in terms of where people who are using SFIA on the website come from is spread across many locations around the world. And you can see some regions here have huge amounts of growth that are going on there. And I can see from where we are at the moment in this year, 2022, this level of growth is also continuing. So at the bottom, I've labeled each slide with just link back to Ian's strategic imperatives. So, this is a sign of increase in adoption. This is a very busy slide, and maybe when you get the recording, you'll be able to have a chance to look a bit more detail. But what we're picking up on this tools and resources approach, if we think basically we've got the core framework, which people pick up and use amongst their organization or individual needs, then outside of that, we have resources, guidelines, tools that people can use to enhance that. And up till around 2019, we didn't do much in that space. And then we started experimenting almost accidentally. We published a long list of bodies of knowledge, and we noticed that Google and others were interested in that. Around the same time, we wanted to poll the user base to see how people did SFIA assessments. So we created some guidelines, and we published those in early 2020. And there on the graph on the left-hand side, that's the brown bar. The light green bar is the bodies of knowledge. And over time, we've gradually increased more and more. And you can see this gradual but steady uptake of people come to the website. And we're now getting over 6,000 monthly views into these sorts of tools and resources. Some are more popular than others. And one that's proved very popular is the one we launched around the SFIA 8, which was a mapping of SFIA skills to different career roles and career groupings. And it was a good example of something we knew people were interested in, but we had resisted doing it because we wanted people to take the time and think about their own organization and their needs and do their own mapping. We have now found, we think, a good way of doing it, which is to give a starting point, but allow people like yourselves, like the 80% who are new to using it and want to find out how SFIA works, to find this as a useful starting point. And that's this grey setup here, which has proved very popular and continues to be. So, as Ian said, we think this is something we should be doing more of. And what we need from the community is, where what do they want to see? What tools and resources would you find useful? Where can you help contribute? And try and really make this a community-driven exercise. So look out for more of that. I won't go through all of these. Again, something to look at as we send you the slides out. But in terms of what we want from the community and what the community does for the SFIA Foundation and the use of SFIA worldwide, this kind of captures it. There's some obvious ones there. Maybe pick out 2 or 3 that are key that you might not spring to mind immediately. The top right there, the long-term stewardship of the framework. So the SFIA framework has been going for around 20 years now, and that has been a real benefit to the community, but it's a real result of the community taking ownership and driving updates and looking after things and making sure things don't get stale and out of date. So that works very well. What we'd like to do more of is help new users, because that is the key adopting SFIA and helping it generate more and more interest, which then in turn feeds the community and helps us there. And then finally on this one, promoting the framework, we just to avoid any doubt, we don't have any marketing team. There's no people out there selling SFIA from within the foundation. So that work is done, if anything, by partners. But what we think is the most powerful way to promote it is for the community to promote it on behalf of the foundation, because it's real users who are doing it. And that's the way to do it. So we would like to see more of that happening in a community-driven style. What this looks like from the way we organize ourselves, and again, there's a big danger here. This looks like an old chart or something you might see within an organization, a professional body, or many of those frameworks out there, who are run on a profit basis. But we have people, members of the community, involved in these things around the table here. And it takes effort to do that. We don't have again, we don't have a lot of resource to help manage all this, so we try and make it as self-managing as we can. And I guess if you look up here, the top end, the community engagement, the communications and marketing is what we want to do a little bit more of with your help. There is a bunch of detail behind these, which again, I won't go through the detail now, but you'll get the slides, and please take time to look at that. Just to give you a size of the scale of stuff that happens within an organization like SFIA. I based a lot of this on what's happening with open source communities, the Apache Foundation and the Plone Foundation, but it gives you a sense of what's needed to keep these things running and why we need help, and I guess why we need funding to do it. And as a summary, you'll see the detail coming, but these are some areas that we could do with some help on. We're open to all offers, and it may be, if you're not an expert in SFIA and you're looking for help with SFIA, you may be able to help in some of these other areas that you do know about, and you can help the community help itself. So that's some examples again on here. We are going to be talking about conferences, but if we do a conference, we're going to need help organizing it, and we'll need people who are willing to present at it, and people who are willing to help manage it on the day or the days that it's on. So that's an example of where some of the help we might need is not necessarily specifically to do with your use of SFIA. Okay, again, you'll get these as we go through the presentation. You get the slides. Now, keep moving quickly. We've got lots to cover. So for today, we've got 3 things we're going to talk through, and then we're going to leave 2 more topics, which we're going to get you to choose from the list we've got. Just remind you that we're doing this to give you some background. It's not going to be the full answer or the full story, but hopefully enough for you to understand what we're trying to do, and then you can choose to get involved as and when you can. So the first one, I'm going to talk about the conference, and how we might do that, or if we do it. Then we're going to talk about some basic educatedness mainly for new users in terms of how SFIA works and how we can bring to life some of the material that's already on the website. And then number 3 is where we'd really appreciate getting some information from the SFIA community that just gives us a chance to explain to others who uses SFIA, because we think that's a great way of promoting it. So over to a poll. So those of you who are new to the call, so some of you weren't on at the beginning, so we're using an app called vvox.app to do this polling. If you go to that on your browser, I'm going to start the poll. If you go to vvox.app and add those three, so the 9-digit code, or you can use the QR code in the bottom left, sorry, the bottom right of the screen, and it will take you to the app as well. This one's a slightly more involved question than previously, so I'll give you some time to think it through. Just put a link in the chat to the page where you can put the answers as well. And if you're not able to get onto vVox for whatever reason, please make use of the chat. We find it really useful for people to respond in the chat as well, or the Q&A. Right. Great, there's loads of you coming on there, lots of new people coming onto the app. So I will leave it open for just a little bit longer. Thanks, Clive. Number one, behavioural factors. I'll put +1 on the score. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. I'll give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So thank you very much for that. That's brilliant. So Clive, you didn't need your extra one, but we've got there. So behavioural factors, I'll just make a note of these, 61, and then additional guidance resources. Okay. If we have time, we will briefly touch the others, but again, the material will be in the slide pack, and we will find ways to get the background on some of those to people who are pick up on those. We are just worried about the amount of time we have this morning to do this. So let me continue. So what that means is that we need to go to the behavioural factors. Sorry. Back to my agenda. We're going to talk about the conference first. So I'm going to give you a brief intro to this. I think everyone understands what the conference will do. And we want to get your feedback on whether we think it's something we should be trying to do as a community. It's not an easy thing to take on. Again, we used to run conferences, and we did some in Australia and the UK, but they were all face-to-face conferences, and we're not sure that is the best approach at the moment with a global audience. So we'd like to find ways of doing that. And we have taken some input from the SFIA Council on this. So there's some ideas around the advantages and disadvantages of doing the face-to-face, virtual or hybrid. Potentially doing regional conferences, so could be based on time zones or languages spoken, or particular common areas of interest around the world that we could pick up on. Also interested to know whether a conference versus actually just doing a series of webinars could be another option. And then well aware that we do it, we need to commit to it and have the resources around to do it. So we would need help and support in a number of ways. So what we've got here is a very simple question, which I will open up now. So again, on the vVox app there. So just to get a gut feel from where you are at the moment, is it something we should try and run? And what's your level of support for it? We will, of course, take other views. So this is not a vote and then we decide there's a majority here. We will definitely do it, but it's great to get your opinions as people who've joined this webinar. Again, please use the chat or the Q&A if you've got some ideas, questions, challenges around how we might do this. And if there's stuff that you think about later or want to raise later on, please let us know that way as well. Okay, we'll close this down now. See if you've got just 10 seconds more just to plump on one of these, and then we'll see where we are. Okay, so I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, thank you very much there. So let me do a quick sum there. It looks like 20, 24, that's 44, plus another 42. So we've got into the 80% who are saying they think confidence is a good idea. And then we have got a minority saying standalone webinars are sufficient. And actually got a good healthy level of support who are at the one supported actively. That is extremely encouraging. And for, of course, number 3, now I completely understand that it's not something that people are able to commit to and wouldn't want people committing too lightly, but if you're interested in attending, that is a good starting point. So let's say, if any thoughts, put them in the chat or the Q&A, but that's brilliant feedback for us from this group. Okay, moving swiftly on. Now I'm going to hand over to Ian here. This is a slightly more complex topic, but if we get the message across, Ian, if you pick up.
Sure. As many know, there are various training providers who offer accredited SFIA training, but many people and organizations provide some awareness of SFIA. What we're interested in doing from the feedback we are getting as a foundation is to develop that a little bit more, in particular some general awareness about SFIA, very much not training, very much a better presentation, if you like, of material that is already published on the website in the About SFIA pages, and make this in a much more digestible form. So that's where we are. Is we don't have it. Where we want to be is where this is readily available to anybody who wants just a general awareness of what SFIA is. And that's what we're proposing to do. We've got a few organizations willing to help us with this. We've got someone analyzing, reviewing, if you like, the existing syllabus for the various training courses. And what we want to do is make sure that we are providing the right level of awareness below that. So essentially, the main thing from our perspective is we want this to be available to anybody who wants to use it. At the moment, if you want to find out about SFIA, you either read what's on the website, or you talk to someone who you are using to help you in your own organization, or you engage a training partner and attend one of their courses. But actually, there's a lot of people who don't want to do any of that. They just want to know what SFIA is and broadly how they can use it. And we want to provide that first level of awareness. The other thing is we now translate the framework into, well, currently 11 languages with 12 with English, and a couple more are going to be added this year, which means that some of this material is just simply not available in a digestible form in one's native language. Thanks, Gary. Yes, there is an increased interest in digital credentials. We do have a digital credential project going on at the moment, and for some, this is proving to be very interesting. So we are actually looking to provide a means by which people can be recognized for their SFIA understanding. And this might be the first start of it, but certainly the other training courses absolutely are.
You okay to move on here?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, I'm just watching the chat at the moment, and that's good.
I'll multitask, so let's, right, we're going to ask you some great stuff. I'm appreciating everything that people are putting on the chat. So let's get a quick poll again. So we just want to know the level of interest in this, and what we might do about it, and also any let's say reservations or ideas you've got, which you put in the chat. So I'm going to start the poll going, just again get a sense of the appetite and interest in this from this group. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now in five seconds. Thanks everyone for doing that, and some good stuff coming through in the chat. Okay, that kind of speaks for itself, and great that people are willing to support it actively as well. The stage we're at the moment is just fleshing out what we think the content of this could be, and then we can get feedback from yourselves and others on that, and then we'll go through to sort of prototyping some of the material and the delivery of it, and get your involvement in that as well. As we've got in the chat, I think the content and how we deliver it are equally important, and we need to make sure the delivery really works well for this group of people who are needing that basic awareness. So keep using the chat. Now we move to the next topic, which is, now this is again a real challenge for the SFIA Foundation, and in some ways we think it shouldn't be. But what we're trying to do is this natural question that anyone who's new to SFIA or interested in this space, or even finding out more about how others use it, who else is using SFIA, and for a number of mainly practical reasons. It's not a philosophical statement. It's more just how the framework is set up. We want it to be freely available. We don't want people to think that if they use SFIA, their name's going to be plastered and shared like sales material. And we obviously have data protection that people signed up for SFIA, and they're not signing up for information to be shared, never mind shared publicly. But having said that, we also believe that there's many people who are using SFIA who would be happy to share some basic information about the fact they use it. And it's really the best way, the most effective way that we can grow the adoption of SFIA is by people seeing that other people are using it. Now, to be clear, this is not about doing detailed case studies or presenting at conferences. This is just some basic information that we can share with others. And we don't think we're doing it in a way that says, and you can contact them. It's more just having a basic identity of people using it, just to give that sense of confidence and a sense of we're joining something that's well used and tried and trusted over the years. So the detail, I think, will be the issue, and what we're trying to work out is what is the minimum information that people will be willing to share that is useful to answer that question: who's using SFIA, and how can we collect that information in such a way that it's very simple to use, so we can make it quick and easy for people like yourselves to say, well, we use it in this way, and it takes you 5 or 10 minutes as opposed to an hour's thinking about it. Then it's more likely to happen. So that's the position we're at the moment, and it depends on us coming up with that mechanism that works for the community, and then it really does come back to people who are using SFIA being willing to take part and do that. We are interested in some organisations who are willing and have the time and space and want to do that, sharing some detailed user stories. We have a couple on the website, and we also have access to previous year's conference material, but much of that happened many, many years ago. So while some of the messages are still relevant on those, we do need things that maybe are a bit fresher and up to date. And that's the challenge on this one. So I'm going to ask the similar question we asked before, what people think about doing this. And again, these are all anonymous, so please don't feel pressure to answer it in the way that you think you should be doing. This is just trying to get a sense of where people are and what the appetite is for doing this. And if you're willing to support it or help with ideas, that would be great as well. So the poll should now be open. Okay, I'm just going to close this now down in 5 seconds. If you want to have one last go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. That is again is very, very positive. And if we had just on this group who are attending this call, we had people willing to do this, we would have far more numbers of case studies, organisations that we're able to share than we do currently. So that's brilliant, very positive. So I think the onus is on us at the moment is to come back answering really number 2 there, which is saying, what the details, how can we do this? And I think if we're able to come up with some ideas and then get your thoughts on whether that's something you can work with, then we can progress. And those who answer number one, if you have some ideas on how we can make this simple and easy, we are all ears to hearing that. Right, well, I'm really find this very, very useful, so I will keep going. Hope you are too. Whoops. So we're now into the optional ones. So timing wise, we're looking good. So we may be able to cover more than this. So this was the one about the additional guidance resources for the SFIA community. And again, back to what I said, this is just the starting point. It, I think, is a really rich area that we could do with some input on where we might take this and where the appetite is. And just to give some orientation, broadly, when we look at resources, they're either related to the core framework. So on the right-hand side, you know, the skills, the levels of responsibility, things in there would be mappings to other frameworks or explanation around the guidance of how to use these for certain roles, you know, things like that might be fitting in there. So they're related to the core of SFIA. And when we have our updates to the SFIA framework and what topics and areas we should be adding to the framework, that all goes into that space. We have added things in there around related skills, for example, which are on the website, and things like that are all in that area. And then on the left-hand side would be more about when we pick it up and use SFIA, how do we make it work in our organizations? And this, again, is highly dependent on the type of organization you're working in, what you're doing with SFIA, what your priorities are. So roughly based it around the life cycle around skills management. So examples we've done in that space so far, things like assessment guidelines, which is on the green there. We have an interest in going further around how we create role profiles and map SFIA skills and levels to the roles. So that would build on the work we've done about the actual starting point with those, but how do organizations pick these up and fit it to their organization? And then other areas that have come up as interest, but we want to be driven by yourselves on where we might take this. There will be ideas that you've got for guidance that aren't covered on here, and that's the beauty of having a community that you are using SFIA or interested in using SFIA, so you'll have ideas that we haven't thought of. So in terms of the poll, I've tried to keep this one simple, which was just to try and capture the appetite for those different types of resources. As I said, we can use the chat to use the Q&A to list anything specific, but what we're trying to do is get the sense about where the interest is, where we might drive this. The next steps, of course, would be to pick up and prioritize areas to take forward. And we would do it in a similar way that we've done before, is to collate information, maybe using some of the tools we said about Miro to help drive that forward, and work with you as a community to build up this. Okay, just going to close the poll now. Okay, right. So just share that. I guess what we're looking at there is that people are interested in both sides are there. I guess that's not too surprising. I think some of the points in the chat were also saying the things are interrelated. So let's take that on board. So the next steps there, again, if you can think on of ideas that you think we should be providing, we do have a little list of things that we think are next steps on this one, so we can share those. But open to ideas and options on that. So the next one I'm going to move to is the behavioural factors. So I'm going to ask Ian to pick up on that one. Get to the slides. There we are.
Okay, so with for SFIA 7, we did a significant amount of work in engaging with the community to address particular themes. We did the same in SFIA 8, and one of those themes was to look at the behavioural factors that have largely been in SFIA since the beginning, but have been well and truly hidden or distributed. Distributed is the right word, but they appear to be hidden within the framework. We had some excellent work done by Penny and Phil in Australia to recognize what those behavioral factors were and to bring them out explicitly in a glossary, which we published alongside SFIA 8. And what we're doing now is exploring where we can take that further forward. So the timeline on the sort of left-hand side is very much we took a look, we found what we wanted to present, and we're now considering how we better present that going forward and how we might refine that both ultimately for SFIA 9, but also as part of guidance. One of the interesting things with SFIA is that despite it being a very broad and very comprehensive framework, it is actually relatively straightforward in terms of navigating your way around it. And for small to medium-sized enterprises that don't have any internal published values or a behavioral model, they can turn to SFIA and pick up something that will work for them. So this is really quite an important piece of work. There is a lot of interest in it, and we're looking to take it forward both in terms of the 4 things on the right-hand side, the messaging, what is the right thing to say about this within SFIA, making sure that our descriptions of behavioral factors are indeed fit for purpose, making sure that they are aligned with the LORs, because that's the critical backbone of SFIA, and also making sure that we're not inventing something new when there's something already exists that we can either map to or make use of. This work is ongoing at the moment. We've got a small working group on looking at this, and we will welcome other ideas from people. Gary, thanks for that. It's a very important point that many companies do have their own behavioral values, if you like, and SFIA has to work with them, but also many organizations do not. And so providing some of those to augment the levels of responsibility, I think is something that's generating a lot of interest. That's just about it, Peter, unless there are any things come up in the chat that I've missed. Peter's just put a poll on this just to get your feedback. There's good points in the chat that we can pick up afterwards.
Sorry, now I was on mute there. I was chatting away.
I was lip reading and then.
Yeah, no, the chat is very useful. I think that captures many of the debates we've had already as well about making sure things work for organisations who do and don't have their own framework. Thanks, Clive. Keep in touch, and if you've got any thoughts, drop us a note. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just going to close the poll now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so there's again broad agreement, and I think that's probably not too surprising. But I think the points in the chat are the ones that are really key in terms of how much further we take it, and as Ian said, how we position it as we take this forward. So what I'm going to try and do, just got a little bit more time than we had. I'm going to fast forward to a question about the community. So I've got another poll here. And it's a broader question, which I'm very what you try and do when you go off script. So let's we have talked about some specific topics, but one thing I wanted to capture before we all leave is having got a sense of some of the things that are going on, thinking about where you are on your journey and use of SFIA. What is it that you would find most useful from the SFIA community? Much of this we are building up, and we could do with a sense of direction in terms of where to take things, and it will only work if we're working with the priorities and needs of the group. The group will be at different stages, so we won't have everyone wanting the same thing. But if we know broader the areas we could be going for, then that gives us a sense of the priorities and where we could be going with this. So again, this is a slightly more complicated question, and you've got 3 choices here. I will put the link in the chat to this in case Mirko said maybe the QR is not going to the right place. I've put a link in the chat if that helps you get to the via a browser. Thanks, Michael. You could choose 5 if you put them in the chat. Thanks, Dan. We'll get back in touch with you. Thanks for your suggestions on the chat as well. Okay, I'm going to give this 20 seconds more. We're reaching the top of the hour, so people will be wanting to to move on to other meetings. I'll just give you a few more seconds when we can. Okay, I'm going to close it in. Okay. I'll just leave that up there. I don't think I've got the bandwidth to calculate exactly what that means. We've got a broad spread of interest, I guess, and clear winner there with number 4, which of course is a core point of having a community, is to get ideas and expertise from others, and that's the real power. And we do need people who are willing to do numbers 1 and 2 and 5, which are helping share that experience and expertise with others. Otherwise, things are imbalanced. Brilliant. That is really, really helpful. Appreciate everyone taking time to do that. And what we'd like to do next from here is we're going to leave the chat open for a few minutes while we close down the meeting. And you can either put stuff into the chat over the next few minutes, or Ian and I's email addresses are there. We speak to each other a lot, so it doesn't really matter who you send the email to. And our next steps is we've got another call like this later on today, collect all the feedback we get and the ideas, and then work out how we can progress these and keep you involved and informed. But I found that really useful. Appreciate everyone who's taken the time to join this and contribute actively. It's been really, really helpful. And then finally, if you're able to help, some ideas we can do, that can be very small bits of help, just providing feedback, taking part in reviews of things that we create, or larger help, then that's also very valuable. So Ian, if I just hand over to you to close things off.
Yes, okay. Well, once again, thanks to everyone for attending and providing the feedback. We do try to respond to what the community wants, and we are trying to find better ways of getting that feedback. So we're looking to engage much more with the global community, and we want them to tell us what they want, and help contribute to developing those things. So as Peter said, a big thank you to you for contributing.